All right, what's up, everyone? Hope you're all doing well. Today, I've got not only one, but two Bruce Lee tier lists. Recently, I bought the Bruce Lee His Greatest Hits collection, Blu ray box set by the Criterion Collection, which I highly recommend if you don't have a Bruce Lee collection of your own. I highly recommend this one because it has both versions of Enter the Dragon. Not just one, it has both versions, the theatrical cut and a special edition. All of the other releases don't even have Enter the Dragon, let alone just a DVD. Like, this is restored in 2K. Both versions are restored 2K. But the other DVDs, the Shout Factory, the Ultimate Collection, the 4K Hong Kong one, um, the master one, like all of those, they don't have Enter the Dragon. You'd have to buy it separately. So just because of that, I highly recommend it. And also, they have a bunch of audio tracks like dubs. They got the original mono oral Mandarin, the Cantonese, the English tracks. They have commentary tracks. They have two discs dedicated to supplements, which include Game of Death 2 has that's where they have the special edition of Game of Enter the Dragon. Have a bunch of like footage from the unseen footage of Game of Devil Unseen, the original footage. They have a bunch of interviews, documentaries. There's one with Bob Wall, which is really funny. I highly recommend checking that one out. But I wanted to talk about these movies, and I didn't want to go into a review about it because there's already people who are much more efficient on it than I am, and that made a great review, and they actually go through everything that you can find on this disc. I'll actually put the link down in the description because I think it's worth checking out. And instead, I just decided, I'll do two tier lists because they are pretty short. And I thought it would be a lot of fun. It gives me an excuse to talk about Bruce Lee. So the first one is a movies tier list. So all five movies that have Bruce Lee, including Game of Death, even though it's not his version. And this is a tier list that I made. It's a Bruce Lee main character tier list. And you can see here it says follow at Zibs Alabong. Don't follow me. I never use Twitter. Fuck Twitter. I just made it because you need to make a Twitter to make a tier list, which is kind of stupid. But anyways, let's start with the Bruce Lee movies. So D is gonna be, the one I think is the worst. S is gonna be the one I think is the best. So and then I'll actually name like which one's my favorite, and so on and so forth. So the first movie that Bruce Lee made, let's actually put them in order here. That way we got it all right like this. The first movie, The Big Boss. This one I think is really good. I was surprised. I wasn't expecting that much from the first Bruce Lee movie. This is his first like major lead role in Hong Kong, and I actually really like it. I like the story of like this character who's made a promise not to fight anymore, not to cause any more trouble, but gets involved anyways in this big sort of like conspiracy going on at the ice factory, and things that are targeting his family. So all of these things really come into play, and he has to kind of like make the decision of either holding back or fighting, and it just all boils down to just some really great action scenes and very endearing story too. It also has James Tien, who I'm a big fan of after seeing this movie. I mean, he's really cool. Like, I really rooted for him throughout the movie. He's really awesome. And I actually think he kind of steals he's basically like the best part of the first half of the movie for sure. It has pretty decent soundtrack. I like that little guitar track they have. Bruce Lee's mannerisms and his fighting style. I like how like the way he's dressed too is really cool. And it the only problem I think this movie kind of has is the fact that there's a continuity error. There's a part towards the end where he has like a bag of chips when he's heading to the big boss's estate for the final fight scene, and it's like the shot right before that was him just running along the road towards it, but then all of a sudden he has a big bag of chips, and it doesn't really make sense. And that's because it comes from a cut, a deleted scene that they were planning to use where Bruce actually, gets the services of of a lady of the night, and after that, when he gives the money, there's like a bag of chips that are on the counter. He takes them and then he leaves, and then that would lead into the next scene that I was talking about. But it was cut, and there's no footage of it. There's only stills that you can find online. So that's the only problem it has. And also, a lot of people might say like, these are kind of old movies, they're a bit outdated. But of course, like the way these movies were filmed, they were shot silent, dubbed over. As far as I know, the Mandarin track, Bruce Lee doesn't speak Mandarin, he speaks Cantonese. So the only voice we have of his in The Big Boss and in a lot of his other movies are just his battle cries. The rest was voiced by someone else who speaks Mandarin. But at least we still get him in the action scenes. You know, we get to see everything that is Bruce Lee, that defines him, that starts him up. It's even the first time you see him do like the stomp. He does a stomp on the guy's head and then he twists his foot. The first time I saw that was in Game of Death. I thought that's where it originated from, but of course, I was mistaken. I thought it was also from Enter the Dragon, actually. Enter the Dragon. And I thought the variation with the one foot was from Game of Death, but it was actually from the Big Boss, which I found pretty interesting. I also like the dynamic with the family in this movie. I like how like there's that scene when they're all doing like that whole like army marching thing, and they're like they're all happy. It's very nice, and like the sad parts are also very touching. So I really enjoyed the Big Boss. It's actually my favorite of the Bruce Lee films for sure. So I'm gonna place this one A tier. Next, we got Fist of Fury. As you can see in this image, it says Fists of Fury. This Fists of Fury is the title that was given to this movie uh, in the West. So basically, when the Big Boss came out, when it was shown in the West, it was retitled as Fists of Fury. But when the next movie came out called Fist of Fury, they're like, oh shit, well, we can't call it Fist of Fury. We already named the Big Boss Fist of Fury because we're a bunch of dumbasses. So we're going to call it the Chinese Connection. It's such a horrible name, the Chinese Connection. I don't know, it sounds like a gangster movie. It doesn't sound like a martial arts flick. But with that being said, I do think Fist of Fury is very entertaining. I find the movie entertaining. Bruce Lee acts like one of those old school samurai characters from like the old Japanese samurai movies, and it's even said throughout in interviews and stuff like that. And he really embodies that rageful character because this movie is all about vengeance. It's all about seeking revenge for his master, I think it's Huo Yuangjia, something like that is his name. I'm sorry if I mispronounced it or just fucked it up entirely, but his character Chen Zhen, and he's back and he wants to find what happened to his master and also seek vengeance against it. The fight scenes are very nice, are very good, especially the iconic fight in the dojo, the first one, and also his fight against the Petrov and the last villain, the Japanese warrior. Uh, I forgot his name. It was like Riki Hashimoto, something like that. I forgot. I don't really remember these names very well, but those two fight scenes are really good. Obviously, it has the best legend flying kick. I think that's the best one. A lot of people might say maybe Enter the Dragon, and they even have it in the Big Boss. But I think Fist of Fury has the best, dragon legend kick, flying kick, however you call it. I think that's the best one. The main problem with this movie is that it kind of it's a decent plot, but it's not that strong. I think the Big Boss had a better plot line, and I also think something that really weighs it down is the whole like Chinese versus Japanese sort of like anti-Japan sort of message. And even Bruce Lee was like, "Man, I don't want to work with you anymore. This is bullshit." Like this whole political thing, and I agree. Like, I'm kind of tired of seeing even like hell. If even back then they were shoving politics into movies, even now they're trying to do it even worse. I'm kind of tired of this whole politics. We see politics every day. We kind of want to move away from that. But unfortunately, it's so ingrained in every bit of the culture that it slips by, and it's not as subtle, especially in a movie like Fist of Fury. So that's a part I really didn't like. And even some of the fight scenes. I mean, that part where he has like two students by in each hand, and he's like swinging them around, and you can clearly see it's not like it's like the dummies, and it looks so stupid. But aside from that, like he is really sick. Like the way he fights, he's like, it's really like as the title says, it's the Fist of Fury. Like what you see as the title is what you're gonna get. So I'm gonna rank it C tier. All right. So next we got Way of the Dragon. Way of the Dragon, I think, is really interesting because it's the first movie that was directed and written by Bruce Lee, and a lot of people seem to put it in like the like lower parts. Like a lot of people say this is the worst one, or some people say it's like not one of his best. I disagree. I think this one is better. Then a lot of people give it credit. It has a good tone of like balancing out serious moments with comedic moments. I think Bruce had like a pretty decent knack for comedy, and you can tell he has a lot of like inspiration from like the old classic comedy movies. And it's not only in the things, because it's not really in the things he says, it's the way he acts. So it's really funny, like that scene in the beginning in the airport. I think it's really funny the way like people just look at him, the way he tries to order, but he doesn't speak English, so he's all like messed up. And his character is very much like how they say a country bumpkin, so it's really funny. But I really like how the character is resourceful. I like how he deals with things, and even like he couldn't even speak to the guy and tell him like, hey, stop harassing like the restaurant. He had to like act out with his hands. And you see that in Kung Fu Hustle, like they do the same thing when the landlady's in the back and she intimidates the axe gang leader. So I really think that's cool. The action scenes are incredible. I mean, he fights two very strong martial artists back to back. He fights Chuck Norris at the end, and they have that cute cat looking back and forth, looking at the match. I think it's really nice. Overall, I really think this is a solid movie, and I think a lot of people don't give it credit. Maybe that's just how I've seen people talk about it. Maybe a lot of people actually do, but I love Way of the Dragon. Sure, there's some problems like visually. Like at the start, there's a part where like it's really out of focus. It's very grainy. Some of the shots are very clumsy, and but I think the the dub is pretty funny, especially the English dub. And it's Bruce who apparently voices it. So like that big fat Italian dude who's like, "Come on," like that's Bruce. That's pretty funny. But no, overall, I think it's nice, and it has a good end to the movie. It has a good twist too, which I wasn't expecting that twist. Well, maybe I was, but it did caught me a bit off guard. But I think it's solid, so I'm gonna place it B tier for sure. Enter the Dragon is the most popular Bruce Lee movie. Full stop. It's the one everyone remembers. It's the first one I ever saw, like, clips of and saw stuff on TV. It's the one that made him an international superstar. Bruce Lee's character is really cool in this movie. He's somewhat sassy, like the way he just tells, Bob Wall when he tells him, "Hey, we need to go." And he's like, "Outside," like, fuck off. And then when the other guy is like, "Mr. Lee, why aren't you in uniform?" And he just stares him down. He's like, "Dude, fuck off. Like, don't tell me what to do." He just stares him down. And there's a lot of like cool action scenes, of course. Like the fight versus Bob Wall is the one that's the most known. Also, the one versus Han, where he like gets scratched up and he screams. He does the legend kick. It's so good. John Saxon and Jim Kelly are very, very good in their roles. I was seeing people saying like, "Oh, I was surprised that Jim Kelly was." A good martial artist, but turned out to be a good actor, and John Saxon, a good actor, turned out to be a decent martial artist. And really, everything that happens in this movie, I give it credit to Bruce Lee, because fuck Robert Klaus and fuck that writer who were like downplaying Bruce Lee and doing their best to like put fucking hard things for Bruce Lee to have a hard time pronouncing, like Braithwaite, and that's the only one Bruce Lee let them have it, because he was like, "All right, bitches, like let's see this shit. I'll say it," and he did. And speaking of Bruce Lee, speech and all that, it's his first time everything is dubbed with his full voice, like English. Everything is just, it's his full voice. So that's what I find cool, because in the other movies it was someone else who would dub his voice because they were recorded in Mandarin. But it's cool to see him speaking in English. And of course, I like the way his voice sounds. I think he sounds pretty cool. And then the only problem I would have with this movie, really, I don't really have much of a problem with it. I really think it's solid. Again, the whole like plot with like the Bruce Lee spying and everything, I think it's very well done. I really don't see like how any of these movies could beat Enter the Dragon. I mean, it really is the best Bruce Lee movie. It's iconic. The soundtrack is great, the pacing is great. I prefer the theatrical version over the special edition, but even then it doesn't detract from the movie. I think it works pretty well. So really, I don't have much to say anymore from that, so I'm just gonna put it up there, S tier. And now the last one, the infamous Game of Death. Obviously, this is going in the D tier, and that's because the only footage of Bruce Lee that's available is the ones he shot versus Danny Inosanto, versus the Hapkido Master, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And those are, you only see that at the end of this movie. And this is Robert Klaus with his shitty directing abilities, who tried to like come up with a new script and just kind of finish the Game of Death, and it was awful. It's really bad. If you really want to know more about it, the Angry Video Game Nerd, or just James Rolfe himself for Cinemassacre, made a video about Game of Death and even talks about Game of Death 2 and Bruceploitation and stuff like that. Very good video. I highly recommend you check it out. And the funniest part is that I think Game of Death 2 did a better job at creating the semblance that Bruce Lee was in this movie than Game of Death, the original. This Game of Death is just horrible. The towel, the superimposed face, the random cuts, all of that stuff is just so bad. And the only saving grace of this movie is really the last footage. Some of the fight scenes with Kim Tai Hyung or Jung, I don't remember what his name is, unfortunately, but the guy who does the stand in as Bruce Lee, Billy Lowe, I think his scenes are pretty decent, but all of the acrobatics is Yuen Biao, who you know from the Police Academy movies with Jackie Chan and Sammo Hung, all those guys. He does the acrobatics for it because the actor who plays Billy Lowe was mostly hired because he knew how to speak English, and he doesn't even speak in the movie. That's Chris Kent who dubs him, and Chris Kent actually does the, those wacky sounds that you hear in Game of Death. And I wasn't even sure if it was him, but it's actually him. So I think that's pretty funny. Very messy movie, although I do still think it's entertaining. I'll watch it any day, but really the best part of the movie is like just seeing the original footage. So that's how I would rank game all of these five movies. The Big Boss is still my favorite, but I do think Enter the Dragon, trumps it. All right, now we're in the next tier list. This is the Bruce Lee main character tier list. So now we're just ranking them in terms of like who is the strongest, who is like, the best one of these characters in terms of their feats and accomplishments and everything. Of course, it's kind of hard to compare these characters, but I'm going to try my best to do so. And it's kind of fun, it was an idea I had in my head. Now, I'm actually going to pull up this image. Boom. That way we can see the characters better, because it's so small on Tier Maker. So we have Cheng Chao-an from, I'm going to butcher these names for sure, but from The Big Boss, Chen Zhen from Fist of Fury, Tang Lung from Way of the Dragon, Lee, just Lee, in Enter the Dragon, and Tien in Game of Death. I'm talking just about the footage that Bruce Lee shot of Game of Death. No Billy Lowe, no Robert Klaus, none of that crap. Just the original like 30 to 40 minute footage that you can find on YouTube. I highly recommend checking it out. There's a lot of people who make definitive lists. Watch them, they're really entertaining. But all right, we're going to start with Cheng Chao-an. I think he might be the weakest. The reason I say this is because out of all of these guys, I think he was the most tired. I mean, his opponent was pretty tough, like, not gonna lie, but everyone else, I mean, he beat the fuck out of real fast. Like, he didn't really struggle that much. Yeah, he did get cut here and there, but for the most part, I mean, it was pretty easy for him. And the boss was the only one who was tough, and after that, he was pretty winded. He was like, down. He really got like beat. It's the first time you really see Bruce Lee really take that much of a beating in a movie. And as much as he has like, a lot of strength and he's very skillful, I think he hasn't reached like the top of his potential, because if you look at his character, it's mostly like a guy going, causing a lot of trouble, and he's obviously strong and everything, but he's not like someone who's like, fought a lot of opponents. I'm guessing he fought a lot of people who were, some skilled opponents and a lot of opponents who just couldn't adapt to his style, to his martial arts. So I do think he's probably going to be the weakest, because I don't think he can beat Chen Zhen. I don't think he can beat Tang Lung. I don't think he can beat Lee. And I don't think he can beat Tien. So I'm definitely placing him in D tier for sure. That's just how I see it. And then next we got Chen Zhen. He's tough because he's like just ruthless aggression. I mean, he just goes after you, and he has a lot of like stamina to fight an entire dojo and to also fight like two very skilled martial artists back to back. And really, he could still go and fight more after that. Like he had a lot of stamina, and that's also because he has a lot of vengeances was driving him. So I don't know if against the other main characters he would manage to beat him. I do think he beats Cheng Chao-an, but at the same time, someone like Tang Lung is very resourceful. You see how he created the projectiles, and Tang Lung also fought a lot of opponents. He fought two, karate masters back to back. He fought Chuck Norris. So I don't think Chen Zhen is the best. I don't think he could probably beat. I feel like maybe he could beat Lee, But I don't know if he could beat Tien because Tien is like a renowned martial artist. He's like, a pro. So much so that like a Korean syndicate was like, yo, come to this pagoda and fight all of these guys. So I don't know. For now, I think I'll have to place Chen Zhen probably like here. But one of the reasons I want to place him C, or I'll place him B for now, and then I'll come back to this decision later. So next we have Tang Lung from Way of the Dragon. I do think he's one of the best. If anything, I think I'd probably give him second place. Again, resourceful, has a lot of stamina like Chen Zhen, and he's basically, I feel like he's the continuation of what who Cheng Chao-an could have been, right? They're both kind of similar in a lot of ways, but I do think Tang Lung has like the edge. So like he's like the evolved version. So that's how I would place it. And then next we have Lee. And Lee, what's interesting about him is I do think he's kind of like a very more like composed character. He only really loses his cool when he fights like Han and when he gets injured. He like beat Bob Wall so easily, and he could have like easily gotten pissed like Chen Zhen and just started beating the fuck out of him. But he just like beat him up, and he's like, whatever, I'm not here for you. And at the end, when he like, you know, decided to break the bottles with Bob Wall's characters, like, hey, like this is for real. He didn't hold back, and he stomps him and he kills him, and then he bows, and that's it. Move on. I got a mission to do. So I like that maturity of that character, and he also seems to have like a lot of knowledge, and he also seems to train people. I mean, he had that student in the beginning of the movie, so I do think he has the edge, and that's why I think he could probably beat Chen Zhen. So I'm kind of inclined of placing them like that. But I don't know if he can beat Tang Lung, so that's kind of debatable. Like these two could be switched, and even then he could come here, right? It could be like tied, right? So these three are tough, but for me, the best of the best is Tien. I Think Tien is the best. So I'm gonna place him at the top here at S tier. And the reason I think he's the best is just you look at the footage, right? He fights Danilo Santo. He's just running circles around him. He's talking all about rhythm, right? Rehearsed routines and stuff. And he's got the bamboo that's very flexible, elusive, has a different sort of, and he talks about broken rhythm. All of these things he's getting in Daniel Santo's mind, and he's just schooling him basically. And then he pulls out the nunchucks after he pulls the nunchucks, and he's like, yo, surprised I can use them. And he outshines him in that regard too. And there's a part where he's just like jumping up and down, back and forth, and making these funny faces. Like he's like even sassier than Lee's character, and he's having a lot more fun. And you can tell that he was like, yeah, he got a hit in or two, but at the end he just completely dominated him. And same thing with the Hapkido master. The two other guys, James Tien and the other actor, I don't know his name, they were getting beat easily. Just strike, block, throw. Block the strike, throw. Punch here and there, block, and he was smiling at them too. He was like, this is easy. And even Tien was getting slammed around, and James Tien at one point was like, he was happy about it almost, because he's like, there's tension between them. But eventually he conditioned him into getting thrown so much that when he tries it again, he chops him to the side, throws him, and strikes him in the nuts. So that's kind of like, okay, he adapted. And after that, it was like, that was it. Like he was standing, looking at his hands, just moving a bit fast, doing some fast jabs, doing everything to kind of get in his head again. Like he's really like, adaptability, I think, is the best way to describe this character. I think he's the most like adaptive character, and that's why I like Tang Lung as well, because I felt like he was creative, and he also adapted. Again, the projectiles that he used, the way he fights the other characters, he's very skillful, and he also knows how to use the nunchucks as well. So does Lee. So all of these three characters are like the most adaptive characters, but I think Tien just a little higher, just because of his like renowned skill. He's like a international sort of champion. So, and then when he fights Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, I mean, it's arguably his hardest opponent, just in sheer size. He has he has that sort of like no style sort of thing going on, and he only beat him really because he had the sort of sensitivity to light, and it was like pretty close. So I do think there's a lot of like um, interesting features about Tien that could have been way more explored for sure had Bruce Lee been able to finish this movie. And I feel like the two other fights we would have seen, anything other scenes we would have seen, like in the beginning, maybe as you see him spar in a tournament or something, a lot of things we could have seen in this movie. I'm pretty sure this would have been like his ultimate character, because as well in Game of Death, Bruce Lee was bringing a lot of his own personal philosophies when it came to martial arts. So I think that's the reason why it also elevates Hai Tian even higher than the rest of these characters. So that's how I would see it. This is how I would rank all these characters: Hai Tian, Tang Lung, Li, Chen Zhen, and Cheng Chao-an. That's how I rank them. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Got the movies tier list, the main characters tier list. Just wanted to make this because it's a lot of fun. I like making tier lists and it gives me an excuse to talk about Bruce Lee after watching all of these movies. And now I'm gonna go back and actually watch some more. So take care, everyone.